A eunuch is defined as someone, usually a man, whose testes, and sometimes also penis and scrotum, have been destroyed or removed. This leads to sterility, and depending on the stage of life at which it is done, various degrees of impotence and loss of libido may occur. Pre-pubertal castration causes a eunuchoid build, which causes the person to be tall, have broad hips, narrow shoulders, and breasts like that of a woman. Secondary sexual characteristics effects, such as small genitals, lack of beard, and an unbroken voice may also occur. Castration after puberty does not lead to degeneration of secondary sexual characteristics. The build remains unchanged, and the reduction of sexual activity is unpredictable. Although sterile, castrate may remain potent for a year or longer, and some even retain libido throughout their lives. There is a reduction in aggression, but other abnormalities of the psyche are usually representative of a psychological reaction to forced castration and the accompanying humiliation and rejection by the community, in addition to the effects of hormonal deprivation. So where were the eunuchs prevalent in ancient times? Against whom were these procedures taken upon? And why? Let's try and find out.
Hello, I'm Mike Droberg, Marine Corps veteran and filmmaker, and we will try to answer these questions on today's episode of Forgotten History.
In antiquity, eunuchs were mostly employed in the Middle East and in China, with two main functions: as guards and servants in harems or other women's quarters, and as chamberlains to kings. The Assyrians are credited with creating eunuchs for government service because it was believed that since they could not have any offspring, they would not attempt to overthrow the ruler and create their own hereditary dynasty. Later, the Assyrians created eunuchs for ritual religious purposes. The priests of Kubaba, the goddess of fertility, voluntarily became eunuchs at the altar so that their goddess would provide them a plentiful harvest, prevent droughts, famines, and bring prosperity to their people. Eunuchs were considered the most suitable guards for the many wives or concubines a ruler may have in his palace, and the eunuch's confidential position in the harems of princes frequently enabled them to exercise an important influence over their royal masters and even to raise themselves to stations of great trust and power. Some rose to become bodyguards, confidential advisors, and even ministers, generals, and admirals. Most eunuchs underwent castration as a condition of their employment, though others were castrated as punishment or after they had been sold into slavery. Eunuchs functioned as political advisors to the emperors of China as early as the Zhou period, from 1122 to 221 BC, and continued as such under the Han, Tang, Ming, and Sung dynasties, persisting almost until the end of the imperial regime. At times, palace eunuchs became more powerful than the emperor and effectively ruled China. Eunuchs were used as court advisors and officials in Persia under Achaemenids from 559 to 330 BC. The Roman emperors Claudius, Nero, and Titus also employed eunuchs. After Nero's wife, Poppaea Sabina, died in 65 AD, supposedly at childbirth, although it was later rumored Nero kicked her to death. Later that following year, he married Sporus, a young slave boy, which he had castrated during their marriage. Nero had Sporus appear in public as his wife, wearing the regalia that was customary for Roman empresses. Among other forms of address, Sporus was termed lady, empress, and mistress. Suetonius quotes one Roman who lived around this time, who remarked that the world would have been better off if Nero's father had married someone more like the castrated boy. Going forward, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Empire in Constantinople, many of the patriarchs during the Byzantine times were eunuchs. For example, Justinian I had eunuch bodyguards, and even many of the legendary janissaries, especially under Mehmed I and Murad I and Murad II, were eunuchs who were in political positions. Political eunuchs also flourished in the centers of Muslim power after AD 750, and as a class, eunuch advisors only disappeared with the end of the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century. Although not a form of eunuchism In the terms of the definition above, voluntary abstention from sexual activity played a strong role among the early fathers of the Christian Church, giving rise, in due course, to the establishment of celibacy in the monastic religious orders. A relationship was perceived between eunuchism and the voluntary abstention from sexual activity as a pure and total dedication to God. An interpretation of the Gospel of Matthew 19:12, which reads, "For there are eunuchs who are born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it." This verse even led to the revered father of the early church, Origen, to castrate himself, an act which, in retrospect, and with greater insight, he bitterly regretted. Clement of Alexandria recommended the virtues of self-discipline and the avoidance of indulgences, but warned that celibacy was worthless unless undertaken in the love of Christ. Nevertheless, various fanatical Christian sects, such as the Arabian Valesians, the Manichaeans, and the Phrygian Montanists, accepted self-castration as a part of their religious practice. Church leaders such as Cassian and Tertullian even denounced sexual intercourse as diabolical. Pope Gregory VII wanted to impose celibacy upon all priests and monks, and while monks were so ordained, the priests were spared until the Second Lateran Council in 1139 that made celibacy mandatory for all Catholic clergy. The Italian practice of castrating boys in order to train them as adult soprano singers, castrati, was ended by Pope Leo XIII in 1878. So, throughout history, eunuchs were usually forced into their situation. Yet today, sex reassignment surgeries are on the rise. The number of procedures, including the removal and construction of external genitalia, increased nearly fourfold from 2000 to 2014, according to the study published in the Journal of JAMA. However, what is not commonly known is that complications from genital surgeries are common. A California study found that a quarter of the 869 vaginoplasty patients had surgical complications so severe that they had to be hospitalized again. Furthermore, Joseph Backholm, president of the Family Policy Institute of Washington, said there is no conclusive evidence that these procedures lead to beneficial outcomes for transgender patients. People who go through gender-masking surgeries still experience disproportionate levels of stress, anxiety, and suicidality, Mr. Backholm said. It calls into question whether rushing into this is actually helpful. Scarier still, thousands of youths are lining up for gender-affirming care. Parents must make decisions about life-altering treatments that have little scientific evidence of their long-term safety and efficacy. While also, the number of gender clinics treating children in the United States has grown from 0 to more than 100 in the past 15 years. Puberty blockers and sex hormones do not have the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval for children's gender care. No clinical trials have established their safety for such off-label use. The drug's long-term effects on fertility and sexual function remain uncleared. And in 2016, the FDA ordered makers of puberty blockers to add a warning about psychiatric problems to the drug's label after the agency received several reports of suicidal thoughts in children who were taking them. More broadly, no large-scale studies have tracked people who received gender-related medical care as children to determine how many remained satisfied with their treatment as they aged, and how many eventually regretted transitioning. The same lack of clarity holds true for the contentious issue of detransitioning when a patient stops or reverses the transition process. The current debate, which is being challenged in the courts, are the attempts by school teachers and advisors to discuss these options with underage students without consulting the parents. So in conclusion, we have gone from an era of castration being forced upon slaves to now allowing the castration of our children. Children under the age of 18 cannot get tattoos, vote, buy firearms, or purchase alcohol or cigarettes. But some people think they are capable of making these life-altering decisions.
Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any comments or show ideas, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.